So, as I was saying that we will have to take the reports of the archaeologists or the assumptions of theirs by very rigorous method of scientific help of scientific disciplines. Now, how can we do that? Therefore, in archaeology and in our historical knowledge, we take help of various dating methods for prehistory. As I said that there is no literary source, there is no dating. So how to date them? That's a big problem. So we are not given license to jump upon any date or any chronology just on the basis of our instant you know archaeology or instant combination of archaeology and anthropology. We can't say that. We have to restrict our things according to various scientific methods which have been developed over the years. So, in the vocabulary of archaeologists, prehistory comprises the period for which no evidence is available from written materials. Writing was not there, simply speaking. When such evidence becomes available, we enter into the realm of history. To proto-history belong cultures whose writings we are unable to read, Indus civilization for that matter, or which are themselves non-literate, but about which we can obtain some understanding on information through the evidence of their contacts with contemporary literate societies. That will also give us some. For example, when Ashokan inscriptions are deciphered, and now when we read them, the script is there. But in those scripts, the people from jungle are mentioned, that they bring such and such forest products for the use in the cities or in the adjoining areas. I am not using deliberately the civilized areas. So, we can do that. So, our early ancestors and those relating to Neolithic period belong to prehistory, because for our entire knowledge about them comes from their physical remains only. One should be very clear about it. As I discussed all those things, we naturally cannot get any dates for them from any records coming down to us from them in this manner. So, various devices, however, have been made available to us, especially from the physical sciences. That's why I've said in the beginning, history and other sciences. So, physical sciences to help us fix niches in time for particular remains or sites, and thereby for the cultures to which they belong. Various methods are there. First of all, when archaeological sites are excavated, strata belong to different cultures. Belonging to different cultures may be found one above another, as I said in my earlier lecture. So, while absolute dating cannot be obtained, the broader divisions are there which are numbered in Latin. So, dating cannot be obtained just by observation of a strata revealed by an excavation. We can still establish sequence according to the layers. So, for the lower strata should ordinarily belong to cultures that are earlier than those of overlying strata, which are lying over them. They are obviously before them. So, relative or not absolute ages of different bones at the same sites can be established by measuring their respective fluorine content, nitrogen content, and uranium contents. If you if we use the scientific method of distinguishing these components, we can get the exact dates. And since fluorine and uranium levels in the bone increase with time, they have a tendency, they will increase with time, while nitrogen has the tendency to decline, it will decrease. So, such measurement helps to place in sequence the cultural phases in which the different bones may be associated to the layers where they are found. So, estimates of time separating one stratum from another can also be made on the basis of thickness of the intervening deposits. When we are cutting the earth, you can see those layers, thickness of the intervening deposits. For getting absolute dates, relative dates we can get like that, but for getting absolute dates to which relative chronology can always be keyed, a number of methods have been developed. By now, we have a number of methods and they are all very useful, complementary, supplementary as well as absolute methods. They are very helpful for us. Two such major dating techniques are based on measurements of radioactivity and magnetism. For very early dates, say from geological times 100,000 years ago to 3,000 million years ago, 3,000 million years, we don't have any other method than to, look at Potassium-Argon method. This is known as K-AR method. This is very important for such a vast period of time. So you see the time bracket also, 100,000 years to 3,000 million years ago. 100,000 million years ago, what happened? So how to know that? So we will use this method, Potassium-Argon method, which is based on radioactivity. The age of a piece of a rock can be established by measuring the proportions of potassium, that is K40, and argon, that is A40, contained in it. Geologists, this is a method of the geological sciences, they use this method in establishing the age of, of a rock or a hill or, such things of very past origin. Then there is another method called paleomagnetism. Is the second important method for a very early dates. 3,000 million years up to that we have Potassium-Argon. Now 200 million to 780,000 years ago, not million, 780,000 years. For this time bracket, paleomagnetism is very useful. Marine rocks, sediments retain the direction of the magnetic fields as it was when these were formed. So originally when they were formed, they had that magnetic field. Now there is an method through which we can read those magnetic fields. So the reversals of the fields took place at certain known times, or sediments can be dated by determining their magnetic phase. This date will then be true also for the fossils contained in those rocks. In them, 4 such major reversals are known to have taken place in last 5 million years. So they have to be known in order to reach a correct, picture or perspective about our history. These two methods are now being supplemented by others. There are other methods. Quite a few I shall be discussing. Rocks are being dated by what is known as fission tracking. Fission tracking. This is also very useful. Fission tracking. This is used for dating certain minerals embedded in the rocks through a count of fission, or minute tracks left by particles emitted by radioactive isotopes. And these, this method yields dates ranging from 1,000 million to 500,000 years ago. These are the time brackets for which, different methods can be very useful. Then there are various methods of measurements of radioactive decay, such as uranium thorium UTH method, which can give dates up to 350,000 years or more. Then this UTH method has been used for dating certain Paleolithic sites in India, and they have given us absolutely different dates. When dates of very early periods as obtained from these methods are quoted, the abbreviations are like MYA or MY. M stands for million, Y is years, so million years ago, or KYA or KY, that is K stands for thousand, we all know. In our normal, transactions also we say 2K, this will cost me 2K, so that 2K is here, KYA. So, for dates of lesser ages, where greater precision is also needed very carefully, the method of determining radiocarbon in all organic materials has been exceptionally important. Therefore, C14, that is carbon dating method, C14 method it is called in normal parlance, is also most crucial. In my department, Professor R.C. God, when he excavated Atranji Kheda site, he subjected all his such findings to carbon dating, and that is why when he says that iron is as old as say around 1000 to 800 BC, nobody challenges it because they have been firmly dated. So, this firm date can be obtained through carbon dating because it looks at the carbon of the thing and date it. So, when life in organic matter becomes extinct, carbon 14 or 14C method, which is in living matter, is present in a constant proportion to carbon 12, begins to decrease at a speedy rate. This rate being known as carbon 14 having a half-life of say 5730 years, half-life of 5730 years. Measuring the proportions of carbon 14 and carbon 12 in any dead organic matter would give the period of time for separating the peasant from the moment the sample ceased to be part of the living organism. That will help us in giving most accurate date for that thing. So, sometime after the discovery of this method in 1949, it was found that the current rate of carbon 14 loss could not be taken to apply to the period before 800 BC, especially in the case of India, because of fluctuations in cosmic radiation. This was established particularly by matching carbon 14 dates with what is known as dendrochronology, or the chronology of climatic variations established by counting and studying the annular tree rings, which tend to be thicker in wet years, obviously, and thinner in the dry ones. They are not getting sufficient nutrients, so they would be dry, they would be thinner. When there is rain, they have plenty of intake of water and with them the minerals, so they would be thicker. That is the logic of dendrochronology. So, they will give you, and then you coincide with the other dates. So, what will happen is that by comparing the tree ring patterns in old dead trees, a continuous chronology of wet and dry years has been built up to say 7000 years in California, United States. But this did not fit the one obtained by the carbon dating of the dead trees. So, there is a discrepancy between the two. The discrepancies could only be removed by providing for calibration. You have to do calibration of dating, that is by adding years to carbon 14 dates through assuming different rates for carbon 14 loss beyond 800 BC. So, the calibrated date suited much better chronology that had been established for ancient Egypt and Iraq from documentary materials. Raw and uncalibrated carbon 14 dates should not therefore be used for any period beyond 800 BC. Why? Because the difference tend to become substantial, very large as we go further back. Thus, 3000 BC obtained by carbon dating becomes 3700 BC, because you are 800 BC could be the former date upon calibration. So, calibration based on tree rings are available For carbon dates up to 8000 BC, which means 9350 BC by calibration. Now, calibration based on coral deposits takes us to carbon date 18,000 BC, which is 21,650 BC by calibration. Carbon dates beyond this have to be stated just as they are, since they no means yet they exist of converting them into their true equivalents. That is the limitation. Dates beyond 40,000 BC, if obtained by carbon dating, are not considered very reliable because of the inherent limitation in that. But a superior technique called AMS from its use of an accelerated mass spectrometer, AMS, can now date organic materials as old as 100,000 years, which were carbon dating has its limitation. So, that limitation can be can be passed by switching over to accelerated mass spectrometer. So, if carbon dates, which are always stated with standard deviations or that set their probable range, are sometimes found to be in conflict with the established sequence of events or strata, a lower stratum getting a later date than the upper stratum, or to be otherwise very wayward. This may be due to a number of factors, such as archaeologists' misreading of the stratum, from a number of factors such as this from which the sample came, or the contamination of the sample through attachment, later organic matter, or simple laboratory fault. In such cases, a selection of dates based on probability becomes necessary. So, we will never say we get firmer date for this. We will say possibly this belongs to this period. Now, carbon 14 dates are conventionally styled BP, that is before present. The present year being taken as 1950. All BP, that is the base year, all BP dates thus need to have 1950 years deducted from them for conversion into BC. Or if they are lower than 1950 BP, they should be deducted from 1950 for conversion into AD. Then you will get the AD dates. Thus, 3000 BP would be equal to 1050 BC, and 500 BP would be equivalent to AD 1450 AD. So, though first employed with carbon 14 dates, the BP counting is now also in use with other methods. A method useful where the object is to be dated had been subjected to heat is the one called thermoluminescence method, TL method. So far, it has given us dates mainly of pottery and very very firm dates for pottery. Can we get? I told you in the beginning also that we use this method for testing pottery to get their dates, because it has the it analyzes the fire with which it was burnt. So, clay when heated releases energy from the quartz it contains. The quartz begins to accumulate energy again once it has cooled. When this reaccumulated energy is measured, then the measurement gives us the time that has passed since the clay has been baked into pottery. So, one can by this means date objects of up to a broad range 500,000 years in age. So, thermoluminescence method is useful for such a broad period. The method is now being extended to soils or flints subjected to fire, which can enable us to date earlier, that is pre-ceramic remains and artifacts as well of pre-ceramic cultures. So, they can be of very useful in determining their dates before the arrival of the pottery, how they were doing it. So, a related method is called optically stimulated luminescence, OSL method. It is based on the fact when a mineral is buried, the number of trapped light sensitive electrons which are trapped with it increases over time. When it is exposed to illumination again in the laboratory, the light emitted by the electrons as they escape can be measured in the laboratory, not in the open sites, and from this the time that the mineral has remained buried can be calculated, which happens accidentally. Finally, there is a method called electron spin resonance, ESR. This is the latest ESR, which has come more recently into use. So, minerals, tooth enamel, shell and coral can be dated by this method, ESR method, its range being 1 million to 1000 years ago. Now, before I conclude, I would say a few things about how these methods have been used for understanding a prehistoric site, which we identify as Neolithic revolution. Neolithic revolution, the term given by God in Childe. So, man was using stones right from Paleolithic times, but by the Neolithic times, in between we have Mesolithic period and all those Chalcolithic period, Mesolithic period mainly. So, you are finding there is a gradual, gradual change in the form of the tools. And by the time we come to Neolithic times, there is a drastic change, because the tools now made are done by ground tools, which were made by rubbing stone against stone. Earlier it was bulb of percussion, when you were striking one big stone with another stone, then a part or a chip of it will come out. So, it is called the bulb of percussion, mark is left behind and the chip has come out. You will use it as per its shape, as an axe, as a burin or as a knife, whatever. You are not giving any shape to it. It is almost as natural as it has come out of that. Maybe some rubbing, some cutting here and there, but no rubbing. Now, in the Neolithic tools, what is more important is that now there is grinding of the tools, meaning thereby the tools are smoothened, the surfaces are smoothened. One you can see, if you happen to be belonging to our South Indian part or any part of India now, since it has become very generalized, and in those households where multiple devices are not there, grinder, mixer and juicer are not there, you will find large bowls kind of thing, where a lady is rotating a pestle and the pulses are pulses are made into paste with which you made dosa or idli. Those kind of, they are well grounded and their origin can be traced back to Neolithic period. Now, this is a major achievement in the Stone Age. They will have smooth surfaces, well rounded and symmetrical shapes. As I will show in the next slide also, you can see they have very smooth shapes. They have, you can hold it easily. It will not hurt your the hand. It will not hurt your fingers. Earlier they had very asymmetrical edges, so it would be very difficult to hold them and put pressure on them. These are more useful, you can put more pressure, so they are more efficient in comparison to the previous tools. Therefore, they could be given much sharper points, whether serving as axes with smooth long edges or as tips for digging sticks, because agriculture has started. They do not have a plow at the moment, so they were doing it what we identify as hoeing, H-O-E-I-N-G. I will write it down for you, H-O-E, hoe agriculture it is called, where a stick is there which has a point here. You dig holes on the earth and you put seeds on them, then cover it with earth. So, these are the things, these are, this is very preliminary kind of agriculture. This is the beginning of agriculture. So, we can make arrowheads, very fine arrowheads in comparison to the previous arrowheads, and these were generally far more effective, as I said, efficient than the old Paleolithic or Mesolithic tools. They were very cumbersome. The famous archaeologist V. Gordon Childe, whom we discussed just now, noted that this Neolithic or New Stone Age, new is new, lithic is stone, tools were associated with very important change in man's material life. See the relationship between the technology and the quality of man's life. This you can't understand with the help of new history tools. They are denying that there is no diffusion. The tools are not. The simple tools may evolve in many civilizations simultaneously, but complex tools don't do that, and they have broader impact on them. So, tools were made with very important changes are made. So, they are reflected in a man's material life. How? They are reflected in their productions. Now, the ground tools themselves could have been developed out of the pounding and rubbing of a stone against a stone required for dehusking the seeds. This was done in 1960s also. We have those okhlis, they are called in Hindi okhlis, where wooden pieces are struck on a mortar, and then the seeds are separated from the husk. So, quaints are there. Quaints have been reported from Neolithic times, not before that. Grinding stones and mullers dating back around 8000 BC. They have been found at Sarai Nehar Rai and Mahadaha. These are two sites located on the banks of the Belan River near Allahabad. These are the achievements of our late G.R. Sharma Sahab, where they were using them for making wild grains edible. In West Asia, mortar and pestle have been found dated back to 9000 BC, only 1000 BC before us. Since in both quaints and mullers, the stone surfaces would be smoothened or would be smoothed by friction at points of contact wherever the roller is contacting, in this in time could suggest the tool makers the possibility, the immense possibility of grinding smooth the entire surfaces of stone tools. This was a major achievement, and this should not go unnoticed, and we will have to discuss it. So, Childe argued that once Neolithic tools began to be made, they would in turn make it easier to cultivate the land. And this would come about when humans, probably women, according to him, since the gender division of labor, they did the gathering of seeds and roots, while the men mainly hunted, discovered that they might not confine themselves to collecting wild grains, but increase their food production by themselves by putting seeds in the ground. So, now domestication of those wild seeds are taking place. This is initiation of that process. So, stone axes would help you in cutting trees, felling the trees to clear the ground much better than earlier rough tools. With the sharp stone tips of digging sticks as primitive hoes, the ground could be better softened. Better the piece of land which is when you are pushing the hoe into it, they will bring large clumps of them. You can smoothen them by beating them, so that it could be made it could be made suitable for seeds to grow. If you put them on hard lands, they will not grow, because when the sprouts are emerging from the seeds, they are very soft. So, they need softer earth outside. So, this was done by them. This was a major achievement. A smooth and sharp spearheads and arrowheads would also make it easier to hunt. So, it would help in reducing the distances that hunters had earlier to traverse in tracking down the game. Once you are moving, these are depicted in our cave paintings. If their arrows are missing, then they are chasing the animal with the help of a spear. So, you have to be very close to the animal, With the help of an arrow, which is a far sophisticated tool, you can shoot the animal from a distance. Guns have further reduced the distance, so don't use the guns. Other developments would take place, not directly attributed to Neolithic technique, but certainly to agriculture. As cultivation became widespread, domestication of cattle would be put on a firmer foundation. They are required for cultivation. So, stubble or the fallows, which now is the popular term is parali, nowadays you might have seen in everyday newspapers, parali burning is a big issue because it is polluting our atmosphere. Those things I am talking about, the fallows would be available as fodder. They were eaten by the animal, they were served to the animals and which would supply both milk and meat, the animals. And this helped to reduce dependence on hunting. You see, there is a gradual link and gradual development. With increased food supply, human population would also grow, naturally. And settled agricultural communities inhabiting certain parts of land settle down there. If they have in the vicinity very fertile tract, why should they move along with the hunting games? So, they could now arise. So, settled population would start coming up. These communities in time would be able to produce a surplus, that is, grow more food than the producers required for their bare subsistence. So, this they would supply to others. So, use of clay and mud brick construction would apply to store surplus grain. Such surplus could then also be appropriated by non-producers, establishing their right by force. The use of force is coming in right time, conferred by cult and custom also. So, classes, private property, state, all these started emerging on the basis of what we have discussed in today's lecture in archaeological phase of our time, starting from Paleolithic to Neolithic. With this brief survey, I would say that Gordon Childe, when he is talking about Neolithic revolution, he also, he has been criticized. People say that what is revolutionary about it? The time period is so vast, time bracket is so vast. So, why you call it Neolithic? In his defense, we can say that, on the western fringe of the Indus Basin at the site of Mehergarh, Balochistan, one can trace the main events of this revolution between 7000 to 3800 BC, which means Neolithic revolution mainly stressed the long period involved is the some 3000 years, not more than that, which is in comparison to Mesolithic age, which is characterized by macroliths had a span of some 25,000 years in a major part of India, with man still remaining basically a forager and hunter. He is not started doing agriculture. In less than 1/8 of that time, all this was changed. Less than 1/8, 25,000 to this 7000 BC. So, here Neolithic revolution can, in the terminology, the application of this term can be justified by this shorter bracket of time in comparison to its previous predecessors. Paleolithic, thousands and thousands of years. Neolithic, 25,000 years. This Mesolithic, 25,000 years. Neolithic, only 7,000 years. So, in relation to the previous ages, that the application of Neolithic age can be very justifiably used for understanding our archaeological cultures. Archaeological cultures I was talking about. So, the methods, dating methods, the archaeology, the basic operations of archaeology, all this becomes covered in our 2 lectures. And for your patience, thank you very much.